Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. We are going to go ahead and call to order the October board meeting of the Cobb County Board of Elections at 3 p.m. Hopefully everyone has the agenda. We will take all items in order this afternoon. We'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. Looks like, given the number of individuals that have signed up, we're fine with the 5-minute limit per speaker, and we will start with those individuals that are joining us virtually. I believe Mr. Eugene Williams, is he on the line? Oh.
There's one virtual on the
And I just need to get them right. Thank you. It looks like Miss Shelley Northrup is on with us virtually. Has she joined?
IS still hasn't started the meeting yet.
Someone remotely starts it, correct?
Yes, IS does.
Okay. Yes, I'll go on to the in-person, but that doesn't mean that we are streaming, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
TV's going for
It's just the WebEx meeting hasn't begun. Excellent. Thank you for that clarification. Looks like you're up anyway, Mr. Williams. Come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Eugene Williams. I live in Marietta. I've submitted 111 challenges today for people that are registered on our Cobb County election roll, but there is no identifiable location where they actually reside. There's several that are in apartment complexes that are rather large apartment complexes, but there's no unit or apartment number associated with that. I did run them through. I don't know if you're familiar with the Melissa address lookup system. A lot of businesses use that when they do the bulk mailings, just to make sure their mail will go out and reach somebody that's a legitimate address. Every one of the ones in the apartments failed the Melissa lookup. They're missing needed information. Basically, you have a situation where you all can't send them any information because realistically, you don't know where they live. You can't get in a car and go to their specific home and meet them or, reach them. So it's, I guess it really kind of begs the question, do these people really even exist necessarily? You really don't know. You can't, anything you send to them is going to be returned back as undeliverable to you. I also challenged some folks that are on they're registered with the Kennesaw State University campuses in both Kennesaw's location and the Marietta location. Again, they have absolutely no identifiable physical location where they're located at. You can't just say, hey, I live over here somewhere. You got to have a specific address that you all can communicate with them and reach them as a voter. I went ahead and just as a test, I just mailed out a letter to one person off each of the Marietta campus and the Kennesaw campus, and as I expected, they all came back as undeliverable. You can't reach them, and again, it just kind of begs the question: do we even know if they exist? You could put 100 more names on there and say this is their address. It's just something I think you need to look at, and I hope you'll put them today on a challenge status. And I just think that would be the appropriate thing to do. Also, I wanted to comment, they had an article in the Marietta Daily Journal regarding the last meeting we held here in September. I was named in that, and I wanted just to make a few comments on that article. I submitted 145 names of voters that are all currently registered Cobb County voters, even though every one of these folks now resides in the state of Florida. They're also registered voters in Florida. They're also registered voters here in Cobb County. And we basically have a situation where these voters can pick and choose which election they want to participate in. Now, you all were provided really well-documented evidence that they're registered now in Florida. And I just don't think we should have a situation where people can say, I'm going to vote in Florida. Oh, no, I'm going to go ahead and vote in Georgia. Or what the heck, I'm going to vote in both of them if I want. That's the kind of situation you're letting get set up. Georgia Code 21-2217, those are the rules for determining your residency in Georgia. And the law clearly lays out the guidelines for you all to follow on that. They have 3 ways you can lose your residency. You can register to vote, or, and it's not and or, it's or, you can actually vote, or you can file a homestead exemption in another location beside the address you're registered to vote at. Any one of those will void your residency, yet you all have created a higher standard than what the law dictates, what the Georgia legislature lays out for you to follow. They say any one of these will void your residency, yet you all demand we do 2 things to have it where the voter will fail their residency.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Is my 5 minutes up?
Yes, sir. It began at 3:01 according to that clock, and it's presently 3:06.
Well, that's a fast clock, but I'll
can
take
only
your
go
word.
by
No,
the
I'm
clock
not.
that's
Okay,
here.
all righty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Certainly.
Ms. Caitlin May.
Good afternoon. My name is Caitlin May, and I'm a voting rights staff attorney at the ACLU of Georgia. The ACLU of Georgia is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to protecting the civil liberties of each and every Georgian. The right to vote is one of the most sacred civil liberties that we have as Americans. We believe voting should be accessible for every citizen, and that voters should only be removed from the rolls or flagged as challenged voters when that process is in strict compliance with both state and federal law. Bare-bones challenges to voters in the immediate run-up to an election places an undue burden on voters at the price of their integral right to participate in civil society. We recently sent a letter to the board detailing why these challenges should be dismissed, and I'm here today to talk about some of those reasons. First, the National Voter Registration Act prohibits the systematic removal of voters within 90 days of an election. We are currently within 29 days of the November election. Challenges based on database and spreadsheet matching without personal or individualized knowledge of the voters being challenged is systematic and not proper at this point in the election cycle. For OCGA 21-230 challenges, the Board of Elections must evaluate each challenge immediately on its face without conducting outside research as to whether it meets the requirement of probable cause to place a voter in challenge status. This means that to sustain these challenges today, the board must find that each voter, by more than a mere suspicion, is not eligible to vote in Cobb County. They would need some individualized evidence of each voter being challenged to do this. These protocols have mostly been used when someone knew, for example, that a neighbor had moved. That's a very different situation than a long list of apartment or dorm numbers being missing from an address based on a database matching process. If someone is placed in challenge status, they will need to vote on a challenged ballot, and this board will be required to hold another hearing before certification of this county's election results. They will need to address the merits of each challenge vote individually. Forcing a voter to cast a challenged ballot should not be taken lightly. This process brings a high likelihood that this vote will not be counted, possibly because of some reporting error by DDS or some other agency. Finally, our election workers are working harder than ever to serve our communities. Their limited resources need to be used processing registrations, sending out absentee ballots, and preparing for early voting next week. There very well could be thousands more challenges like this before Election Day, but it's important to remember that the board is not obligated to find individualized evidence if the challenger has not presented any. The burden is solely on the challenger to show that they have done the individual and rigorous investigation into each person that they challenged, and that they can show that the voter they are challenging is not eligible to vote where they are registered. If the challenger is unable to do so, as in this case, the board must dismiss all challenges. Thank you for your time, and I do have copies of these prepared remarks for the board if y'all would like them.
Thank you, Ms. May. Ms. Christine McKinnell. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Christine McKinnell, Cobb County resident. I'd like to thank the board for your time. As an active Cobb County resident, I would like to extend my sincerest gratitude to Janine Evler and her entire staff. As a poll worker, advanced voting worker, and now a poll manager, I can attest to the dedication of our Cobb County election staff, area supervisors, poll workers, and managers. In listening to previous public comments, I would like to share that all poll workers take part in a very rigorous training program each election cycle. There are multiple experienced instructors in each training. Ms. Evler's team goes above and beyond to ensure each training is very thorough. I myself have personally witnessed a trainer spending one-on-one time with a poll worker to guarantee they left with a secure understanding of their duties and ready for Election Day. Poll workers do not sign up for 6 hours plus of training, setup day, which happens during normal working hours, and to a single 14-plus hour workday for the money. I can guarantee you that. We do it to ensure our elections are accurate, safe, and accessible for all of our fellow Cobb County voters. The pool of election workers has diminished due to the pandemic, and our once largest generation is aging. I strongly encourage we look to millennials and Generation Z as poll workers. It may mean increasing pay or considering 2 shifts during early voting and Election Day. Not every person is a morning person. I have a 21-year-old, I know that personally. 2 shifts can be done and keep our elections accurate and safe. Also, this would make a poll worker accessible, being a poll worker accessible to a wider demographic. Regarding the constant complaints of wait times, Cobb County has offered interactive maps since 2016 showing voting locations and wait times. Maybe this service is not being utilized properly. Pack your patience when you come to the poll. Remember that poll workers deserve a minimum 2 15-hour breaks and at least a 30-minute lunch. Most do not even take that much time while they're working a 14-hour shift. Each poll is also required to track wait times on Election Day. I don't know if this data has been widely publicized. I haven't seen it in mainstream media or online. I would ask that that be done. I can assure you, if a wait time exceeds an hour, an area supervisor or someone from Ms. Evler's office is reaching out to that poll. I do not see the DMV or Social Security office making the news for their wait times. Again, I appreciate Janine and her staff. I appreciate all poll workers, you, the board, our area supervisors and managers who all work longer than 14 hours on Election Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKinnell. Keith Weiss. Did I get it right?
Well, it's Kent, so I didn't spell it right for bad handwriting.
I need new glasses. But I do appreciate your patience with me on that, and it's good to see you today. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Kent Bice, and I live in Powder Springs in Cobb County. And I also would like to thank the County Board of Elections and Ms. Evler and their staff for working on behalf of the voters tirelessly in this election. I've canvassed almost 600 homes in Powder Springs as part of this election drive, and over the last 3 months, I've spoken to, 100 or so voters. The other 500 didn't answer the door, or I'd left a flyer, but almost none of them said that they were going to vote by mail this year. The legislature has made it a little bit harder to vote by mail, and they're worried that they would send in a ballot that then would be rejected. And so instead, a lot of them said that they were going to vote early this year. And I would like to make sure that we're giving them the opportunity to cure any defects that might be in the ballots. So I would urge the Board of Elections to make the vote by mail process efficient and timely. I think we could send out ballots as early as tomorrow and start processing them October 24th. And so that would be my suggestion to They won't have a lot of time, but they will have some time if their ballot is rejected to try to cure that. As we get ready, next week, early election starts, I would want to do that. We're doing everything we can to get eligible voters access to the ballot. And I have two suggestions, both of which are probably already in place. First, during early voting, we need to provide sufficient check-in stations. You know, the polling pad is the first place where the person comes in and puts their ID in, and if it are not enough check-in stations, that can lead to long lines and causing a bottleneck of voters. The second one, and that follows on to the general election, is that we got to be prepared to handle any emergency that might happen. Poll worker training is underway to handle such events, and I attended one last week. I'm going to be a poll worker in the general election. I signed up after some Fulton County poll workers were named and called out last time, and I thought, well, I need to do something about that and contribute my part. In 2020, I was a poll watcher for the general election, and that was the first time we had the new ballot marking devices. And so as they were setting up the ballot marking devices early in the morning of Election Day, the poll workers found that no paper was delivered for them to use in the printers that are one of the steps of the process. Some school paper was borrowed. This was at an elementary school, and we had a ballot marking device open by 7. So I would urge the board to have a line management and mitigation strategy in place. I also would strongly encourage the Board of Elections to reject frivolous challenges made with the objectives of sowing chaos and raising doubts about the integrity of an election. A number of challenges are going to be heard today about registered voters who are on this agenda where their address is missing an apartment number, a dorm number. For the purposes of voting, the address is used to figure out what precinct a person is eligible to vote in. Since we don't have a dorm building or an apartment building split up into different precincts, it doesn't matter what the dorm number is or apartment number. What matters is that they've already registered, they have earned the right to vote, and their registration should not be disenfranchised because of a petty, insignificant detail. Once again, I would urge that the vote-by-mail ballots be mailed out as soon as possible and then processed. There will still be a very short time for a voter whose ballot is received but rejected to be notified. The vote by mail is used by people who face some kind of hardship to vote in person. I think public policy ought to strive to protect the rights, including voting rights, of our most vulnerable citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bice. Mr. Matsali, please.
Hello, I'm Ahmad Salih. I live in Vinings. I believe that the Democrats are using the wrong reasoning in their fight against abortion bans that are sweeping the red states these days. They are talking about a woman's right to choose when they should be talking about the First Amendment, freedom of religion. I'll explain that in a second. Meanwhile, the Republicans are using life begins at conception as if it were a scientific fact, but it's a religious opinion. And I should know, I'm a former scientist with 4 degrees and 7 years experience in aerospace engineering, also a medical doctor with 28 years experience in emergency. I'm saying this not to blow my own horn, but just to let you know that I understand science and I understand medicine. Not everything, but enough. Enough to know that there are a lot of things that we can measure about the human body. but there are quite a few that we can't. We can't measure thoughts. We can't measure feelings, both of emotional type or physical type, such as pain. And we cannot measure the soul. So therefore, we cannot say when the soul comes into the body with respect to birth, and we cannot say when it leaves with respect to death. So whether you believe that life begins at conception, or whether you believe that God breathed into man the breath of life and he became a living soul, as in Genesis, you have a right to that belief, or any other belief. But you don't have the right to push that belief on anybody else. And especially, big government does not have the right to tell anybody what to believe. That's the First Amendment. Now, there are a lot of people, not a lot, but quite a few, who are pushing this idea of Christian nationalism now, such as our Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who thinks that this country was founded on Christianity. But that's just ignorance. It was not. Our founding fathers, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Benjamin Franklin, they were deists. They were not evangelical Christians. And this country was formed to try to get away from tying religion to government. They had suffered in Great Britain. People were basically given raw deals if they didn't belong to the Church of England. They wanted to get away from that. And we look around the world today and we see some of the modern theocracies where their religion is governing their government, such as in Iran a few weeks ago, where this young woman was picked up by the morality police, I think is what they're called, taken down, interrogated, and killed because she didn't have a headdress on. Or this little girl, a couple of years ago, was beaten almost to death because she wanted to go to school. Now, I know none of us want to have a government like that. And I'm not saying we've gone that far, but we are headed in that direction. Burning books in Virginia, Florida, Texas, trying to tell teachers what to teach because people are afraid of critical race theory and don't even understand what it is. And now passing laws saying that a woman has to carry a fetus to term because of their religious opinion. I think we'll see what the American people believe next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sully. Ms. Debbie Fisher.
Good afternoon, Board. Since I only have 5 minutes and I usually talk way too long, I'll try to be brief on this. I just want to bring to light, since we have a lot of people here opposing cleaning up voter rolls, that no one that I know of ever submits a name to be removed from the rolls to be vicious. It's because we have an obligation, you have an obligation to make sure these rolls are clean. And what has transpired over the last 3 meetings, as far as a couple of well-meaning Cobb citizens trying to clean up the voter rolls, really is pretty disappointing. But with that said, I'm going to talk about 2 other things that I think need clarification. One is how we will be doing duplication panels this time around. Midstream during the primaries, we switched from hand marking to machine marking. And I want to voice my extreme opposition to duplicating an absentee ballot that is on paper, hand-marked, to a machine ballot that is not hand-marked and inserts the QR code when scanned. If someone wanted to vote in person and have an electronic ballot cast, they would show up in person. The ballot needs to remain in the same form that it was originally submitted. And then secondly, we were just alerted this morning that we have another new process midstream in such a very, very important election. And that is the pilot that we're going to be doing on the poll pad software. I'm not saying I'm opposed to this poll pad software. I'm opposed to the following. I am opposed to the fact that it is so late in the cycle that we're being informed. I'm sure the county knew prior to this would be happening. We're in the process of getting our poll watchers certified, and we are done training, and we get slapped with this today. That's ridiculous, and it shouldn't happen. Secondly, I want to read from the tab that, thank you, Janine, for sending us this information, by the way, from the tab and what it says. And I sure hope this is a prototype and not what will be printed out, but just let me read it. Have to turn on the light because I'm blind. It does say training mode. This is what will be printed. Application for in-person absentee ballot. What the heck is that? Okay? Then I won't bore you with the details of the voter, but then it goes on in the sworn oath. Oath of the elector. I, George Washington, do swear or affirm that I am a citizen of the U.S. and of the state of Georgia, that I possess the qualifications of an elector required by the laws of the state of Georgia, that I am entitled to vote in the precinct containing my residence in the primary or election, in which this ballot is to be cast, and that I am eligible to vote by absentee ballot. Last time I checked, absentee ballots aren't registered on the poll pad. I understand that the offer or acceptance of money, blah, 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 blah. I hope you can answer if this is actually a prototype and it's not serious, because I don't know why we're conflating the importance of in-person versus absentee. And I ask that you postpone this pilot. We've had 2 special elections. We could have tested it. The training video was actually done in 2020, so this isn't news. And I just think that when this was decided that Cobb County would be one of the pilot test counties, that no consideration whatsoever is given to the poll watchers.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Your time has expired.
You're welcome. And can I expect an answer? Can I expect an answer?
This is not a conversation. This is
Okay, I'll
primarily
email
public
you.
comment.
You're right. I apologize. I'll
but
email
thank
you.
Cindy Battles.
I'm impressed because you need new glasses, but you still read my handwriting. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing us the time for public comment. My name is Cindy Battles, and I am the Director of Policy and Engagement for the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. We come here today to talk about the fact that there's a concerted, organized effort being made across the state of Georgia to lodge mass voter challenges to the eligibility of Georgia's registered voters. These are often based on incomplete, inaccurate, or hearsay information. These challenges appear to be, that we're hearing today, appear to be similar or the same as the ones that we've heard in multiple counties across the state, including Gwinnett County, which dismissed all of their challenges on October 3rd, and Chatham County, which dismissed or deferred all of their challenges just this morning. The challenges the board are considering today are being heard within 90 days of the November 8th general election, with candidates for federal office on the ballot. Therefore, the challenges must be dismissed because the federal law, the National Voter Registration Act of 1993, prohibits the board from systemically removing voters from the registration list within 90 days of federal election. Before someone points out that the difference between 229 and 230 challenges means that you can indeed do that, I'll point out that in 2020, there was a federal litigation in Muskogee County. That's Majority Forward versus Ben Hill County Board of Elections. Those challenges were also 239 challenges, but what the judge found is you cannot make that distinction between 229 and 230 challenges this close to an election because the end result is the same, and that is the voter would not be allowed to vote on a regular ballot. Tomorrow is the deadline for voter registration. If a voter is removed from the registration list today as a result of these challenges, they will not have the opportunity to know that they have been removed or challenged before the voter registration deadline, and thanks to SB 202, not only would they not be able to vote on a regular ballot in the November election, if there is a runoff in December, they would not be able to vote a regular ballot in December as well, because you will not have the opportunity to update the voter registration. Moreover, in light of the amendments made to Section 21-2-230 by the enactment of SB 202, the board is required to take up the challenges as one made pursuant to 21-2-229, thereby making it crystal clear there is no functional distinction between the end result of the two voter challenge laws. Even under state law, these challenges that were presented must be dismissed because the challenges have failed to carry their burden of establishing probable cause to believe that the challenged voters are not eligible to vote in Cobb County. Just missing an apartment number does not mean that they're not a resident of Cobb County. If it's returned mail, then the NVRA has a process for that, and even if that process doesn't move as fast as some of the residents of Cobb County would like, that doesn't give them the right to circumvent that law to remove them faster. Sorry, I'm trying to talk fast because I know we have a lot to get through here. In fact, the Voting Rights Act of 1995 provides that a voter will not be denied the right to vote based on an error on voter registration form that is immaterial to determining whether or not that individual is qualified to vote. That's 52 U.S.C.S. 10101 A2B. This guarantee is referred to as the materiality provision of the Voting Rights Act. Unless the challenger provided sufficient evidence to establish that the voters are not eligible to vote in Cobb County, the challenges must be dismissed under Georgia law. Additionally, under OCGA Section 21-2-217B, the decision of the registrars to whom such application is made shall be presumptive evidence of a person's resident for voting purposes. Here, the Cobb County Registrar's Office determined that the information provided by the applicant was sufficient to establish the residence for voting purposes. The challengers have not rebutted the presumption that the challenged voters were eligible to vote in Cobb County at the addresses provided and have failed to otherwise establish that they are no longer eligible to vote in Cobb County. Therefore, again, the challenges must be dismissed for the failure to establish probable cause for the challenges under state law in addition to the 90-day bar of the NVRA. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Battles. I
got here late. I was registering voters.
I apologize. There's a process that we always follow. And in light of the fact that you're aware of the process, then you're likely going to understand why I'm going to say no, ma'am, but thank you. During the tenure that I've served as this board chair, I do not believe that there has been anyone added, so I apologize for that, but no, you cannot speak during public comment. Is Ms. Shelley, well, one, do we have the WebEx up?
The WebEx was started successfully, but Ms. Northrup is not on the line.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Yep, thank you, sir. And ma'am? We'll move on to the second item on our agenda, the approval of our meeting minutes from our September the 12th meeting. Have you all had an opportunity to review the minutes? And to the extent that anyone has any comments or questions about the minutes? No? I'll entertain a motion to approve them. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve our board meeting minutes from our September 12th meeting. Call the question. Those in favor? The vote is unanimous. Thank you. Ms. Pringle?
Good afternoon, Board.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so we have one polling location to bring before you this afternoon. And so the purpose would be to request approval to change the polling place location at Precinct Marietta 3A from Pleasant Grove Missionary Baptist Church at 566 Whitlock Avenue, Northwest, Marietta, Georgia, 30064, to Schweitzer Library, which is at 266 Roswell Street, Northeast Marietta, 30060, beginning January 1st, 2023. And so the background is Pleasant Grove Missionary Baptist Church has notified Cobb County Board of Elections and Registration that the facility is no longer available as a polling location. The Schweitzer Library is 0.7 miles from the existing polling place and will adequately serve the 4,280 active registered voters. This change is to be effective January 1st, 2023. Notification of this change will include sending new precinct cards to all registered voters in the Marietta 3 precinct, posting signs at and near old polling locations at the first effective election, and providing information on the Cobb Elections website among notification techniques.
Thank you, Ms. Pringle. I have one question, but I'll defer to my colleagues to the extent they have any questions prior to mine. Do you all have any questions for Ms. Pringle? No. The question that I have is with regard to this particular polling location, I believe you just stated that the number of voters that are served here, 4,280.
Yes.
Do we have any anticipation of potentially splitting this polling location, given that number in the future?
No, not at this time, no.
Okay.
No, we believe that it will serve, this polling location
Adequately.
will serve adequately, yes.
Okay. And my only reason in raising it, I'm not suggesting that you should switch it or split it. I defer to your judgment. But to the extent that the polling location has been the same for a number of years, if we did anticipate splitting it, maybe we should consider splitting it now before we move into letting them know about the change in voting, in their voting location.
If I may.
Yes, please.
We actually did split this precinct 2 years ago, or
Okay.
3, I believe. We have a Marietta 3B.
Okay, got it.
That is the southern portion of the precinct.
Okay, just wanted to double check.
All right.
Okay. There being no further comments or questions from the board, is there a motion on this proposed polling change, location change? To approve? Okay. Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the polling location change of precinct Marietta 3A from Pleasant Grove Missionary Baptist Church to Schweitzer Library. I'll call a question. All those in favor? The vote is unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Pringle.
Thank you, Board.
We will now move on to the next item on the agenda, inasmuch that it is the challenges that have been referenced a number of times since the beginning of this meeting, as proposed by Ms. Carol Asta, as well as Mr. Eugene Williams. The information underlying the proposed challenges, it was emailed to all of us. Do you all have any comments and or questions? And again, at this point, just for the purposes of clarifying kind of what the process is, it's a probable cause determination that this board will make. And so if there are any comments and or questions that you would like to raise, and then Daniel, I want to be certain that we are moving about this in the right way, as to whether we would need to in light of the fact that litigation very well may come out of these items, depending upon what decision is made with respect to undertaking that conversation in executive session?
You are permitted to have an executive session if there's potential for future litigation on a
Litigation.
matter, but it's not required.
Okay.
It's just whatever the board, if it's something you feel like you need to talk about in an executive session, we can do it.
Okay.
But if not, you're welcome to, either to discuss it in public or just take a vote in public.
Okay. I just want to, obviously, you and I've had that conversation. I just wanted to get it on the record that that possibility is there. Obviously, I defer to the majority as to whether we take this up in executive session. Looks like, Pat, you may have something for us.
Well, and just refreshing my memory, if I believe that some of these people were registered, like this man had earlier said, they were registered in Florida.
I don't know that that's what we are taking up at this point.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Yeah, my understanding is that's not the basis of these challenges. You have certain challenges that were asserted under Section 229. These are all being asserted under Section 230, not so much as noted for the basis of, or on the basis that they reside elsewhere. The basis here is that the addresses are, quote, incomplete due to apartment numbers and or unit numbers and or dorm numbers that are not noted.
But I thought there were other addresses too that were there.
That's not under this challenge. Thank you, Pat. So at this point, is there a motion to move into executive session? Hearing none, then we'll continue. Does anyone have any further comment or question with respect to these proposed challenges? Yes, sir.
I had one question. Do we need to vote on each of these challenges individually, or can we vote on all of them as a group?
That's a decision I believe that we make as a board. I will note that while there are multiple addresses noted, it's a separate address for each bulleted item. The basis is the same, or the basis for the challenges is the same with respect to a missing apartment number, room number, or unit number. So I don't know. That's part and parcel of the issue, to be quite honest, in as much that there has been no individualized inquiry that's been made with respect to each of these sets of challenges. I personally have not driven out to 4695 North Church Lane, but I will note at one point in my life I lived in an apartment at 751 Caliber Lake, which is located in Cobb off of South Cobb Drive, and 751 was my address. There was no apartment number. And this board is not required to make an individual inquiry. We are to evaluate each challenge on its face. But I don't know that I can make the assumption that 1000 Chastain Road, that there are apartment numbers there. I don't know, but I do know that, again, I lived at 751 Caliber Lake when I first got out of college, and that was my address. There was no unit number or apartment number. Yes?
If it pleases the board, I would just make a motion to dismiss all of these challenges wholesale because they lack probable cause.
Okay. It's been moved and properly seconded to summarily dismiss each of these items, these challenges for lack of probable cause. Call the question. Those in favor? I note your dissent, Mr. Gartland, but the vote passes 4-1. Moving on to the next item, board member comments. I do have one question for Ms. Evler, but again, I will defer to my colleagues before I pose my question.
Janine, I just have a question about where we are as far as poll worker training and some variations on that. Who is required to be trained in person? What kind of maybe online refreshers might be required? I'm not clear on where we are and whether we even needed additional poll workers.
Today, I received a message from our recruiter who says we are 80% fully staffed. The additional 20% is really standby workers that they have not yet hired. But essentially, we're fully staffed for poll workers. Of course, it's a moving target because we often get people who drop out either before or after training. We are still training up until the week before, no, 2 weeks before the election. Training ends on the Saturday. And classes are ongoing. Most people will attend an in-person class. Those are designed to be, the training is designed to be in person. We have a full equipment class. We have a new manager class. There is an online component that is a prerequisite for those in-person classes, so they have to take both. And the online portion is mostly, the things that are not necessary to have hands-on. So, the type of election, how the voters move through the polls, how the polls are set up, the things that are more general. And there is also going to be an online class for people who are hired at the last minute, if that's necessary, or people who have not been able to get scheduled for class due to some emergency that they had to drop. So there will be a online clerk class because those people will only be able to serve as a clerk in a limited role.
Right, and any of those trainings be available for board members?
Yes, if you want to attend a training or see something online, you just have to contact our office. Kara Pringle is the one that is in that division.
Okay, thank you.
Did I hear you say that we are fully staffed?
Essentially, we are 80% staffed, but we have asked them to hire 2 standbys for every poll. So essentially, the 20% that is not staffed are those extra workers that we usually, get in place and train so that they are ready to fill in if we have drops. It's, most of the time, we end up the whole training session, the recruiting session, where we have used every standby. We might have 2 or 3 left, very few. So it's a rotating thing. You bring in a standby when you lose a regular worker, and then you hire another standby until it becomes down to the very end, and then you just end up using all those standbys.
So you compensate really with the 20% then?
Yeah, the 20% are just that we're not quite at the point where we are hiring those extra people. They're doing that now. And then they will end up being used up, and that 80% that is really the true positions, that'll be what is the fully staffed. So essentially, we have every position filled right now except those extra workers that we put in place.
That's commendable.
Yep. I agree with Pat, Mr. Gartland, in as much that you and your staff are to be, as well as the third party that is assisting with the recruitment, are to be commended for your diligence. I know that it has not been easy, and I will just be very transparent, as I always am, in some instances in connection with this board and the decisions that we have made as a board with respect to ensuring that there is sufficient opportunity for individuals that are residents of Cobb to vote. That put a little bit more stress and strain on you and your team, and I appreciate, and I think I speak on behalf of the board, I appreciate your diligence and the efforts that you went to ensure that we are fully staffed, and it's great to hear that we are. Speaking with regard to the election, obviously early voting begins a week from today, and wanted to just touch base with you. I believe obviously all decisions this board needed to make have been made, but wanted to see where you and your staff are as far as being comfortable that everything is in place And if there is anything further, obviously, you need from us.
I don't think there is. Of course, we are still planning. We are still every day, finalizing different plans. Today, we met with a facility that is in our area that is willing to provide overflow parking.
Excellent.
So those are the kinds of things where, we are down to the wire, obviously. Monday is the beginning, but we will have everything in place. The advanced voting staff is training their workers. They may actually be done at this point, but they've been training them last week and this week. So everything is moving right along. I think the new location is working out very well. We've already realized benefits of being together as a department, having everybody in the same location. We've seen coordination, improvements because of that. So we're very pleased the way things are going right now.
Right. And we are pleased to hear that you're pleased with everything and how it's going, especially with regard to the new location. Does anyone have anything further?
I'd like to take this opportunity to have Janine share with us more about, or maybe for the first time, more details on the last call absentee ballot programming that we're implementing.
Sure. So because drop boxes are tied to advance voting, as you all know, and advance voting ends on the Friday before the election, there is only one other way that voters can drop off their absentee voted ballot to our office and get it there by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Without this new program, the only way they could do that is to bring it to our main office, because that's the only thing that would be open and ready to receive. That's where the registrars are located. But this program, we did try it in 2021 at various libraries, would be what we're calling a last call absentee drop-off program, and we're going to use 7 different libraries around the county. We are going to deputize workers to be at those locations, so they will be deputy registrars and legally able to receive and process those ballots. And the voters will be able to drop them off on Saturday prior to the election and Monday prior to the election, which will help people to be able to, for one thing, do it on a weekend because we won't be open that weekend, and to do it in a way that is closer to their homes to be able to drop it off. Obviously, that time period is too late in the process to mail the ballot. So again, the only way to get it to us is to hand deliver it. And so we will be publishing or posting on our website the locations for that program and getting the word out through social media and hopefully the news media as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very, very good work, very hard work, I think, to add on to the other responsibilities.
Absolutely, and I thank you, Jessica, for raising that. And as someone that previously served as a deputy registrar, not here in Cobb, but in an adjoining county in 2020, I'm glad to hear that the program is in full swing and that we're leveraging the opportunity to pull in deputy registrars to support us in this. Anything further?
I have one last thing on my list, and that is to ask my colleagues to consider whether we want to have a blackout day or time for considering any challenges that may arise between now and the end of Election Day, because that's a possibility. And I think that we could probably make that decision by email, but I just wanted to raise that point in case we are faced with additional challenges.
Before I respond, I want to be certain I understand what blackout means.
Well, for us to look at our calendar so that we can make sure that we have a quorum to really work with any challenges that may come forward.
To set a date certain by which we will not consider anymore, or a date between now and the election that we will consider. I just want to
a date following the election day and following the provisional 3 days, in case we have challenges that come up well, even following the 3 days, in case we have challenges that come up before the end of Election Day. Because they can be filed up to that point. Am I correct? They could be. So I'm just proposing maybe we consider that. But again, I think that can be taken care of through email communication among us.
Sure. Yeah,
Because I think it's required that we actually deal with that before certification. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe that week of the election or after that following days.
it would have to be that Wednesday through
Right.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, no, that's fair. Duly noted.
Okay.
Anything further?
Speak up and turn the mics up. We can't hear anything.
Okay, well, my mic is up, and I know I'm generally heard. But I'm happy to repeat or ask Jessica to repeat her question.
Okay, did you hear the last question? Okay, I was faced away. Did you hear my last question? I was just asking I was just saying that perhaps the board can consider
Challenges.
a time for us to address challenges because they can be made up through Election Day. And so we may want to clear our calendars for a period of time before certification. But again, we can handle that through email communication, I believe, but that was just a suggestion that I know is a process that at least one other county is following. They have already set a date in case there are challenges.
Let me just clarify for you, Ms.
Okay.
Brooks, if you don't mind.
Please do. Please do.
So that a 2:30 challenge can be made against anyone up until the time they vote, if they're voting in person.
Right.
And if they're voting absentee, up until 5 p.m. the day before Election Day. So any challenges would have to come in before that. Obviously, you can't consider a challenge that comes in at 5 o'clock on the next day. But the purpose of a hearing afterwards would be anyone where probable cause might have been sustained. It would then be to consider whether you then count the vote as like a provision, then you consider them as along with the provisionals or what are the other set of ballots that that might be challenged. So if you have a challenged ballot that gets upheld before the election, then you would deal with those between voting day and certification. So
Yes.
there's really two different things we're talking about. Do you need to have a hearing to determine probable cause before voting day? And do you need to have a separate one set separately? Now, usually the board just handles the other ones on the day of the certification before you certify them in a final.
So really before Monday.
Yes, and I appreciate your distinguishing between the circumstances that might arise.
So with respect to those circumstances, though, I do not, and I should look at the minutes, because the minutes will let us know. I do not believe that there are any challenges that are sustained such that, or were sustained such that individuals that were challenged have been placed in a challenge status so that when they go to the poll, they would be provided with, quote, a challenged ballot that we would then have to take up after election day, but prior to certification, correct?
Not at this time. I mean,
Okay.
the statute says if you get a challenge, you will determine probable cause immediately, but that's, there's no other meeting scheduled between now and then, so you have to decide if you want to call another meeting before election day if other challenges get.
Okay.
So of those two scenarios you described, there are no there are no challenged voters that fall in one of those scenarios. So then we'd only be taking up any additional challenges that are filed if the board determines that we will between now and election day.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that.
Do you have something, Mr. Gartland?
Well, I was going to say that it'd be before certification, really, right before that Monday.
Yes, I mean, again, we're talking about two different things. If
Right.
you're talking about whether you need to have a probable cause hearing, if there are more 230s, that would be before the election.
Right.
If you need to have one. And then if there are anyone who ends up in challenge status, and then there's a certain subset of provisional ballots that sometimes have to be cleared up before certification. So that's a separate hearing that you might have to have either before or at the certification hearing.
That's the reason I said Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday.
Right, but at present, there are none in that first category, so, okay. We'll just keep looking at our inboxes. Anything further? There being none, speaking of meetings, board meetings, our next meeting will be held on November 8th, 2022. That meeting will be held at 995 Roswell Street, obviously our new location. And then on November the 15th, we will have our certification meeting, also to be held at our new location at 3 p.m. Hearing nothing further, we'll adjourn the meeting at 4 p.m. And thank you all for your participation, as well as for those that are present with us virtually and in the room.